Welcome to All Set for Sunday, a podcast for busy and distracted Catholics to be a little more prepared for Sunday Mass. My name is Scott Williams. This is my friend Jeff Traylor and co-host. How are you, Jeff?
I'm great. How are you, Scott?
Good. It's wonderful being so close to one another. Our knees are almost touching.
Yeah, we're trying a new setup for the YouTube.
Yeah.
We'll see how people like it. We still have these prison walls behind us, but someday we'll find something more decorative.
Yeah, one day.
There.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Father Tim Wyciskalla, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? Good to be with you again.
Super good. What's the picture on the top of your bookshelf there?
That is St. Meinrad Arch Abbey.
Oh,
if anyone's ever been to St. Meinrad, one of the most beautiful places in all of Indiana.
I would agree with that. I went there a couple of weeks ago and they have like this little pilgrimage chapel called Monte Cassino. Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, I'm very familiar. It's a cool place. We used to do a pilgrimage up there in January or February when it was cold.
And now it's actually a cool place. They have air conditioning in it.
That's right. They've restored it since I've been there, but it's beautiful.
Pretty awesome.
It's a designated pilgrimage site. You can get an indulgence if you go there.
Oh, I've been indulged.
If you went to confession mass and prayed for the Holy Father's intentions.
And did not get indulged.
All right. That's all right. You can always go back.
Well, speaking of being indulged, would you like to indulge us with the readings? The 2-minute drill?
The 2-minute drill? Yes, I would love to. Sorry, I just thought of a dumb question for later, so I needed to write in. We're this deep, and I've already got dumb questions. That's how my brain works. 25th Sunday in Ordinary Time that we are heading into here. Our first reading is from Isaiah. Isaiah says, right off the bat, he says a phrase that, interestingly enough, Scott and I just had like our men's prayer group last night, and this really stuck out to me based on the conversation we had there. But seek the Lord while he may be found, call him while he is near. I like the message Isaiah is trying to share with us here, that like we should be looking for him at all times, but especially when we're hurting is when he is near, when he can be found, and when he is needed. That's when the Lord appears to us. Our responsorial psalm says the Lord is near to all who call upon him. I just made my own point. That was really good.
Yeah.
Really,
Isaiah's
point, but same deal. Our second reading comes from the letter to the Philippians, first letter to the Philippians. Here it says, Paul shares that Christ will be magnified in my body, which it's a goal that we're all working towards. How do we personify Christ? How do we be Christ-like in our world? And I think it's a cool concept to think about how he would be magnified in our body, or even the fact that he would just say, I am going to act in such a way that Christ will be magnified in my body. It reminds me of a quote from Pope Francis where he talks about that we should give off the fragrance of Christ, that our lives should give off the fragrance of Christ. So just like pastors should smell like their sheep, right, Father?
Correct.
Yeah. So Father smells like me.
I'm sorry, everybody.
You smell terrible, Father.
Oh,
just kidding. Didn't you have that
right next to me? He knows that.
Didn't you have that in your email signature when you worked at the school?
I did.
Yeah.
Hey, you remember?
Yeah, we emailed
a long time ago.
It was.
Oh,
your email signature said I smell terrible.
Yes.
Father Tim smells terrible. God bless Jeff Traylor.
GB.
The gospel smiley face also. The gospel reading then comes from Matthew chapter 20, 1-16. It says, Jesus told his disciples this parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out at dawn to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with them for the usual daily wage, he sent them into his vineyard. Going out about 9 o'clock, the landowner saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and he said to them, you go to my vineyard, and I will give you what is just. So they went off, and he went out again around noon, around 3 o'clock, and did likewise. Going out about 5 o'clock, the landowner found others standing around and said to them, why do you stand here idle all day? They answered, because no one has hired us. He said to them, you too go to my vineyard. When it was the evening, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, summon the laborers and give them their pay, beginning with the last and ending with the first. When those who had started about 5 o'clock came, each received the usual daily wage. So when they first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them, or so when the first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also got the usual wage. And on receiving it, they grumbled against the landowner, saying, these last ones worked only for an hour, and you have made them equal to us, who bore the day's burden in the heat. He said to one of them in reply, my friend, I am not cheating you. Did you not agree with me for the usual daily wage? Take what is yours and go. What if I wish to give this last one the same as you? Or am I not free to do as I wish with my own money? Are you envious because I am generous? Thus the last will be first, and the first will be last.
That's a good job, Jeff. Father, did Jeff get anything wrong?
No, you did a very good job going through all those readings. What is the over-under that someone at your parish will refer to the second reading as St. Paul's letter to the Philippines? Because it happens almost every time, at least once. But Jeff said Philippians, so that's good.
Thank you.
That's funny.
Paul never wrote to the. Paul didn't write to the Philippines. Very good.
The best part is the
Good
person
summary.
who says that will say it with such authority.
Mhm.
And great. The first letter of
I've
Paul
never heard
to
that.
the Philippines.
That's great. I haven't heard that. But I was thinking during this gospel reading, do you think that there are any translations of the Bible that include like emojis? No.
I doubt it.
Somebody's done it,
Right?
Just converted every word that has an emoji to the emoji. Like,
Yeah, like or like
When the
colon,
it'll be like the
close
millennial translation of the Bible when that comes out.
Yeah.
They'll use
That's a
emojis.
terrible idea. Anyways,
So
I don't know. We can make a lot of money with that, I think. I don't want to do it, but
let's not do it. There's enough emojis in this world. Let's not have them creep into scripture. So just out of curiosity for the two of you, when you hear this gospel, do you feel like you sympathize with the workers that worked all day? Does it bother?
I wrote right under this gospel in my book here, this is stupid. That's what I wrote.
Does it bother you? Do you feel like, that's not
bothers
just
me. Like, yeah,
I love preaching on this gospel because it bothers everybody.
it doesn't make sense to me, but at the same time, because like it focuses on generosity at the end. He's like,
but it didn't, and to be perfectly honest, it didn't make sense to me. Well, I looked at it in context of, God's mercy is beyond us, his love is beyond us, until I heard a homily or read a homily, I can't remember which one it was, by Pope Benedict about this. And so I make it my own.
Where did you hear a homily from Pope Benedict?
Well, I mean, I don't know. See, I can't remember if it was when he was in the United States for the papal visit that he preached on this, or if it was just something I read.
The B16 pod.
Yeah. But anyways, the way to understand this, and I think once you understand it, it's one of my favorite gospels. We look at it like,
wait, can we before you dive in and like make me feel, can I talk about why, like, the things that make me angry about
this? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Here's the things that I think are stupid about this. I don't
Stupid's
think
not the right word. The things you don't understand. But go ahead. Yeah.
I'm stupid. And because I'm stupid, I don't understand. But here's the things that I think I don't understand. Okay. First off, I very much understand a laborer who is like, hold on, I just worked like a 10-hour day and I got the same amount as that guy who worked an hour. Like, this is ridiculous. Second, I also understand the landowner who's just like, hey, we agreed to a daily wage, didn't we? That's what you get. I do understand that. Doesn't mean he's being fair. It doesn't mean he's being just. It doesn't mean he's being good, but he is just saying, this was the contract we had. This is the deal you made. So, like, I'm not saying he cheated anyone, but he's not being nice. He's not doing the right thing. Anyway, those are the things that make me mad.
Sense. And I'll be honest.
Then when he just comes back and says, are you envious because I'm generous? I'm like, hold on, get off your high horse, landowner. Like, you're being a jerk. I'm using very good language here. You're being a real jerk right now. And now all of a sudden you're just like, I am generous. And anyway, sorry.
And
things that bother me, but I'm also a very, very, very broken human. So I'm excited to hear you tell me about why I shouldn't be bothered.
We know that the landowner represents God, the Father, in this. So we know that we're missing something because you're right. That's exactly how I read it. That's anyone that reads it would think, well, like, he can do whatever he wants and he's being generous, but that's not fair. Here's the thing though, is we're looking at it from the context that working in the vineyard all day is the harder part. It is the less desirable part. and being out in the world, not being in the vineyard, is the easier, more carefree, better part, because you're not working. What Christ is trying to say is working in the vineyard, being a part of God's kingdom, doing the things you're called to as a Christian, that's the better part. That's the more joyful place to be. So in some sense, the ones that work there all day, they did get paid more because they got to work there all day. Whereas the ones who are out doing their thing in the world, living without, in other words, those who are not following the will of God, those who are not a part of this kingdom of God, they're suffering because of that. And so we see it as like there's this notion that we think like, we're being good Christians, but everyone else who's doing whatever they want, they're having all the fun. We're suffering now, but we'll get the reward in the end. And Christ is saying, no, the reward is now. The reward is being in the vineyard, is working in the vineyard on earth. That's where the joy is. That's where fulfillment is. That's where. So those that worked all day should have seen themselves as the lucky ones because they were there the longest.
Mm.
They didn't waste most of their lives like the ones at the end. They got in time, and God's mercy brought them in, and they got the same reward, the same payment, which is salvation, but they'd wasted their lives. They lost what truly mattered for most of their lives. And the ones in the vineyard, that's where the joy is. So he's trying to get us to see that, like, don't think like, you're here suffering and sacrificing because you're going to get rewarded in heaven. It's also something wonderful to be here now. And it's not the case that, oh, they get to have all the fun now, but at least we get to go to heaven. No, they're not having all the fun now. They're going without what truly matters, and a sense of joy and peace and fulfillment and connection to God that those in the vineyard, those in the kingdom have, they're deprived of. So if anything, the ones that worked all day are the ones who got the most. That's what he's trying to get us to see.
Okay. I very much understand that from the context of the Lord's vineyard. I don't think it's a good parable because the reality of what he's trying to compare it to is working hard all day, but getting the exact same reward.
I understand. Yeah. Well, and again,
there's not actual joy in picking. Like, I'm sure there was not great fulfillment and joy in working in this landowner's vineyard. Like, there probably was, other than you were going to get a day's wage. But if then you find out, wait a second, I could have worked only 1 hour and gotten that same wage. My point, yes. I agree with you about everything you said. My point is, like, I think you missed the mark on this parable.
Yeah. You're looking at it as a modern capitalist, which Jesus was not. So it's a parable.
Well, I'm looking at it as a slave being hired by a landowner.
No, slaves
a laborer to being hired by a landowner.
Yeah, no, I understand. So that's the surface level. But again, it's a parable. The idea is, and as you know, when Christ himself explains parables like the seeds, it's like an allegory. He's giving us what does the vineyard represent. That's the important part. The vineyard doesn't represent a 9-to-5 job that you're working at. It represents working in the Lord's kingdom. But the reality is, though, it's okay to sit with that tension, because at times it does feel like what you said. If we're honest with ourselves, working in the Lord's vineyard doesn't seem fun all the time, and it does sometimes seem like life would be easier or more pleasurable if we just didn't have to have to do all this. And so he's trying to get us to orient our mind to see, first of all, there's also, of course, the fact of some people might think if someone lives a life of not being with God and then converts at the end, it's not fair that they get to go to heaven too. So there is that. I mean, there is still that sense of, well, that's not fair. I was Christian my whole life, and this person was only Christian, gave themselves to God, or was, cared about salvation at the very end. But again, Christ is saying, aren't you lucky that you were there your whole life? And isn't it sad that they missed it most of their lives? That's the message that at least I'm going to try and pull out of it.
Yeah, the reality is that Jesus forgave the sinner that was crucified next to him, but he still got crucified. Right?
Yeah. I mean, exactly. Yeah. And being a sinner is not the more fun place to be, is not the better place to be. Like people talk about famously the Emperor Constantine. He refused to be baptized until his deathbed, because he was like, then I got all my sins forgiven. I can do whatever I want my whole life and be baptized on my deathbed. and then and he was lucky enough to have a slow death. He didn't die suddenly, so he got baptized on his deathbed. And people are like, well, that wasn't he lucky? He got to do whatever he wanted his whole life and be forgiven in the very end. But that's the wrong way of looking at it. That's what Christ, I think, is trying to get us to see. It's not that he was lucky, it's that he wasted his whole life until the very end, and then he found the truth. Unlike the people that started working first thing in the morning, they found it from the beginning.
I like this message. I think it's great. Don't be surprised if you hear me in the pews on Sunday go. So
Jeff just wants a bigger paycheck. Maybe Jeff.
No. I just don't want somebody else to get the same paycheck as me who only shows up 1 hour.
Maybe you'll be in a higher celestial sphere than those that convert at the end.
Oh, that's good.
All right.
All right. Did we do it?
I think we did. So what you're saying, recap, you're just going to give Pope Benedict's homily and claim it as your own.
I am. I'm going to be like, and if you guys enjoy this message, it came from the genius of my own mind.
Will you do it in a German accent?
I don't know. I'm not good at German accents.
If you wanted to, could you just read other people's homilies?
Oh, that's a good question.
I mean, you can, yeah, I would say you can quote homilies. You could read, I suppose, a homily prepared for you. Probably should give credit to who it was. The important part about a homily is not that it's the priest's own work of literature. It's that a message is conveyed, so it's.
So you could reasonably get up there and say,
I'm going to read this homily.
Yeah, I was gonna prepare a homily, but this was a very impactful homily that I heard. So
or this reflection by this saint. Yeah, you could do that. There's
then bring up like multiple characters, people, and do like a whole act it out. That'd be fun.
I would say that's probably not envisioned, but
all right. We already went into dumb questions, so we're here now.
We've arrived.
Yeah.
All right, dumb question. First off, we were talking about it a little bit at the beginning, but your office looks great. I know we've talked.
That's right. We have new.
You're finally in your new offices off the campaign. I was just over last night for the meeting. Like everything just looks great, but you've got fun thing. I'm curious about. You have a statue over your right shoulder. And I'm curious what that is a statue of.
That is the Infant of Prague. And it was here when I got here. This was in the pastor's office when I moved in. Hey. I'm not sure where it came from, but it's just a little statuette of the infant. You can see he's holding the world as king of the world, wearing the crown. I doubt Jesus ever dressed like this at that age. But for a person in the Middle Ages, that would have been recognizable as a young king.
Also, it looks more like a toddler of Prague.
Yeah, a toddler. Yeah, I don't know why they call it the infant of Prague.
That's funny.
The young child of Prague.
And you saw
there was all sorts of cool things here. That this is a zucchetto worn by Pius XII. That was just it was here when I got here. So I put it back up on the wall in a little shadow box.
Nice. Which is where zucchettos should go.
Yeah. So I'm assuming someone went there. There's a tradition that if you buy a zucchetta that is the same kind the Pope's wears, which a couple of the places in Rome, where I used to live, by the way, did you know that? A couple of the places in Rome,
there it was.
Can buy and you can trade them. So Scott, did you do that with Pope Francis?
I did. Did
you put your zucchetta into a shadow box?
Yeah, we don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, that's what I think a shadow box is cool. Now this one comes with like a little certificate that verifies that he wore it. So I don't know where it came from. But
can you write me a certificate as a canon lawyer?
I didn't witness you do it, so for all I know, you could just be saying that and you just bought it. So
I've got pics.
I can't verify. Oh, okay, if you have a picture, it's good. That'd be good enough to bring it onto Pawn Stars for Rick to assess it. He would know it was real.
Do you have like a stamp or something?
That one has a
Pawn Stars fan.
I've seen it a few times. I enjoy it.
Yes.
Someone brought in a relic once, and he had someone come in to translate the Latin on the back of it. And it gave the old warning about selling and buying relics and assuring, that the person can know of God's wrath. And Rick was like, I don't want any part of this. I'm not buying that.
I love that you're on a first name basis with the characters from Pawn Stars.
Well, he's not a character. He's a real person.
These are real stories.
I was going to note that on your bookshelf over there, you're celebrating the Infant of Prague and yourself. I see twice with your, what's your funny little hat called there?
Oh, that's called a Beretta. Yeah, it's not my
Beretta.
thing. It's a hat priest used to wear. They rarely do anymore.
Yeah,
Like
but
a
that one's
clerical hat.
isn't yours specific because of your degree work?
Not that one. That's a black one. The cannonball one is green.
Oh, where
Yeah.
do you keep that in a different shadow box?
That's over in the house. Yeah.
Okay.
I only use that for graduation ceremonies.
And then you have some award on that shelf?
I have the Roncalli Alumnus of the Year Award, which, by the way, so this year Roncalli is giving. So for those listening, Roncalli is the Catholic high school on the south side of Indianapolis where I went and where Jeff taught. Scott, you didn't go there, did you?
No, but I know where it's at.
Yeah, and
My mom was in the first graduating class there.
Really? So they give out Alumni of the Year awards, and I had it that year. And this year it's Brother Matthew Perry.
You used to be able to argue you were one of the more famous priests.
So Brother Matthew Perry, who is
Michael.
getting I'm sorry, Brother
Matthew
Michael Perry
is the actor from Friends.
Correct. Michael Perry is getting it this year, and he was the Superior General of the Orders of Friar Minor, better known as the Franciscans. So literally the successor of Saint Francis of Assisi went to Roncalli and is getting. But I got the award before he did. So what's that say?
So he's a brother, though. He's not a priest.
Shall be
he's a
brother.
brother.
Father, the last will be first, and the first will be last.
that makes perfect. Yeah, that's very
that's what I heard today.
Yeah, he's a brother, correct? Just like Saint Francis himself.
But he's also a priest.
I don't believe he is because it's brother.
He is. I do know that he is.
Why does it say brother then?
The conversation I had with people around Roncalli is that he has chosen, since he has stepped down as minister general, to go by brother.
But normally you would go as father the whole time you were.
I know. We actually discussed this. Was a question I asked on the podcast the other day without this very specific.
Oh, well, there you go. I did not know that. So he's a priest.
We asked Father Christian about this.
Yeah, but he also said that people say father.
Yep.
So,
but
he wants to go by brother.
But he is a priest. He was Father Michael Perry.
Okay.
And then now that he is not Minister General. So anyway, who knows? I think when you're the successor of St. Francis, you get to
do whatever you want.
Yeah. Awesome.
You can choose your pronouns these days.
Brother, father. What are yours, Scott?
Those aren't pronouns.
You can't share that on the.
Those are titles.
Sorry. All right. Do we have to
great.
edit
So this is going downhill. All right. Second question I have for you. Yesterday, I had a meeting with somebody who's from the Pontifical Office for Missions, or for missionary workers in the United States, and I was trying to figure out what a pontifical office means, because he answered directly to the Vatican, and I was like, well, we're not a pontifical, we're not one of those, but if the Vatican told us something, we'd probably answer directly too.
Correct. Yeah.
Like,
so,
as Catholics, don't we all just answer directly?
Was this someone from the Propaganda Fide in Rome, like the Vatican office for the evangelization of peoples? Or was it someone from USCCB, from like the American office? Or was it someone? These are probably was. If he specifically said pontifical, it was probably someone.
Father,
come on. Probably someone who was a part of
the Pontifical Mission Societies.
What's the address?
It isn't like she works for the U.S. branch of this group.
The Pontifical Mission. It's probably what we call a juridic person. I'm trying to think of a name for that.
The lay term.
The layman's term. It's like an organization that is recognized by the church, has its official statutes, its official standing, like a diocese would or a parish would, but it's pontifical, meaning that its authority, its next superior is not a bishop or a religious order, but straight to Rome.
Okay.
So like the Jesuit order within the United States is pontifical because their superior general answers to the Pope. This is probably a worldwide lay organization that has pontifical status, would be my guess.
It was interesting because in my conversation with this woman, she was pretty impressive. She was saying that we're working on a project, and she said, I have to wrap this up in the next 10 days because I've been requested by Rome to come back for the synod for a month. Because they have a big synod coming up. So that's part of what I was leading into.
She was an American?
She's actually, I believe, French, but is
but a
speaks
part of the
English.
American branch.
Yeah,
of
yeah,
it.
yes.
I've never heard of it, but
So she's been like tasked to help with the synod. And I was like, oh yeah, the synod. But then I was thinking I would just ask you today, tell me about this synod. What is this the big synod on synods?
yes, this is called the Synod on Synodality.
Hmm.
So it's a synod is
It's
just
a
when
synod.
a synod is when the church calls together bishops with the Pope to come together as a group to discern and discuss things of the day that are being that each synod is focused on. It's a step down from an ecumenical council, which the last one was Vatican II. But Vatican II actually established that synods of bishops would happen, and there can be national synods like just American bishops. This is a universal synod, so they're going to Rome with the Pope, and the topic being discussed on this one is the synod, what we call the synodal process. So synodality in general, the idea of coming together to discern, with the bishops and the people and theologians who get to participate in this. So she's obviously a layperson. She's participating, and then they will produce documents and things that will
Will help
give us
steer
a
this
sense
process in the future.
of how we look at this process and how often it happens, what it does, that kind of thing. So it's a synod about synods, which almost seems redundant, but that's the topic that they're coming together to talk about. And
So
spirit,
you
yeah.
said there can be national synods. So like there could be a synod of US bishops.
Yes,
A synod in the US, or and obviously ones that involve the Pope, like they have that authority of the Vatican.
So if there was a national synod, like I actually think there is either one going on recently or maybe one coming up in Australia or Oceania. So like Australia and New Zealand and all that, they'll have a synod there wherever it's held and discuss whatever topic is relevant that they decide on, and then send their documents or their final things to Rome, to the Pope for approval.
Is your buddy involved in that one? What's his name?
I have a friend from Australia. Yes, Father Baldwin. I don't know if he's involved in that.
Oh. Can we call him right now and just ask?
Well, it's what, 6-hour difference. It would only be about 6 p.m. there. We probably could.
Yeah. My producer's telling me that we've got him ringing in.
Oh, I thought he was telling you that we were out of time.
My next dumb question, Scott, segue good. Father, you were on a radio show, you said yesterday?
Yeah, correct.
You were on a radio show yesterday. Can you make sure and say while we're recording, how'd you end up on that radio show?
Yeah, so I got an email from the producer of a show called The Inner Life, which is on Relevant Radio, which is, I think, mostly online, but there's actually one in Bloomington. There's a station in Bloomington, and he said that we heard you on some embarrassing podcast out of Indianapolis, and we wanted
you say the actual thing.
He said we heard you on All Set for Sunday, and we'd like you to be on our show. And it was, yes. So you guys were known to him, and he wanted me on because of you, because I'd been on with you.
That's awesome. Thank you for inviting us. Sorry we couldn't make it.
Yeah, I tried, but they said no, that they weren't quite big enough to have you two yet, but they still need to grow, and then they will.
No, thank you for sharing. I thought that was pretty cool.
No, it was very cool. Yeah. So he specifically did. He said, since you were on, I was listening to All Set for Sunday and you were a guest, so we'd like to have you on. The guy that hosts The Inner Life's name is Patrick. I just lost it. The Inner Life. It's that guy. I can't. Patrick.
What's his last name?
Patrick Conley. There we go. Sorry, Patrick Conley, if you're listening. Yes, Patrick Conley. It was a great show. That was fun. It was an hour long. Callers could call in. A different setup, but we talked about virtues.
We're going to do a call in one day on our podcast, but I'm only going to send the invite out to call in to your friends.
That would be a terrible idea, but you can go for it.
Just have them show up on the
Zoom.
Yeah.
Just Zoom bomb in. Awesome.
Thank you, Father.
It's been great.
Father.
Good to see you guys.